Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to UX, and this is why 90% of Japan is empty. Channel Real Life Lore. Yeah, okay, this new Real Life Lore video. Okay, when it comes to Real Life Lore videos, like usually they're like too big. I don't react to it. But yeah, their Real Life Lore videos are really good. So when topics like this come, like this is original Real Life Lore type of video, right? Like did you know type of way, like, oh, did you know Japan is mostly empty? Did you know like most of the population is in this specific area? Like videos like this is what I love about Real Life Lore. I like geopolitics, obviously, but when it comes to geopolitics, there's way too many channels who makes video like that. Real Life Lore is this specific. I like videos like this. So this is going to be very interesting. Let's do this one.
Japan is one of the world's most populous countries. Home to around 123 million people today, Japan is the world's 11th most populous country. And it's also home to the world's second most
123 million. Come on, man, that's peanuts. Come to India and see popular. You'll see 123 million in one place.
populous island, Honshu, home to more than 83% of the Japanese population and more than 102 million people all on its own. But when you look just beneath the surface of these statistics, you'll see that Japan is one of the most unusual and interesting population patterns in the world. Because the vast majority of Japan's population all just live within a relatively small and linear line that runs across the center and east of the country's south. Nearly 2/3 of the entire Japanese population all just live within this line that encompasses
When I see shit like this, only thing I can think of is weather or earthquakes, something like that. I don't know, phenomenons.
most of Japan's largest metropolitan areas, including Fukuoka, Hida-Kyushu, Hiroshima, Okayama, Takamatsu, Kobe, Osaka, Kyoto, Nagoya, Hamamatsu, Shizuoka, and of course the biggest of all, Tokyo. Roughly 80 million Japanese live within this long but narrow line that extends for around 1,200 kilometers, across an area that only makes up less than 10% of Japan's total land area, leaving behind the remaining 90% of the country that's significantly more sparsely populated. To help you visualize this divide better, roughly 80 million Japanese live within the line that makes up less than 10% of the country's area, while only about 43 million Japanese live within the rest of the 90% plus of the country. Nearly half of the population lives within the much smaller line. The line of Japan contains an average population density that's nearly 17 times greater than the rest of the country has, which is one of the most astonishing differences between two different regions of the same country seen anywhere in the world. Put another way, the line of Japan all throughout is even more dense than the crowded city-state of Vatican City is, while the rest of Japan has an average population density that's about the same as the US state of Pennsylvania. Economically, the line also accounts for an even more astonishing 70% of the entire Japanese economy. This highly populated and economically powerful line across Japan has been referred to by many different names. Sometimes it's referred to as the Taiheiyo Belt, which in English means Pacific Belt, and other times as the Tokaido Corridor. I will continue referring to it from here on as the Taiheiyo Belt, and in many ways, it is fairly comparable in both size and scope to the Northeast megalopolis in the United States.
The perspectives are insane.
In many ways, it is fairly comparable in both.
Look at that, how small this is compared to the China, India, most of Africa, Europe, Australia. America's not even in the picture, otherwise that would look big as well. To know that Japan is top 5 economies, to know that Japan is like one of the top everything. When it comes to like car consumers and production, Japan is just there. One of the top, like USA, China, India, and then Japan. It's like the biggest car market. And everything when you think of, and look at how small it is, and it does all those things, right? And like some of my friends have gone to Japan and they're like, the gyms here and things and etiquettes, it's like some things is just like mind-numbing to me. The level of precision they have, just the way they live. The stats that, okay, if you go to like bullet train, and for some reason, like even if you're late like few minutes, they'll just give you free ticket because that's unheard of. That's next level shit.
Size and scope to the Northeast megalopolis in the United States, the most densely populated continuous urban area in North America that runs across the cities of Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston. Geographically, the Taiheiyo Belt is a bit larger. Placed side by side with Fukuoka beginning where Washington, D.C. begins, the Taiheiyo Belt would extend across the entire northeast coast well beyond Boston, with Tokyo placed roughly in central Maine. With around 80 million people living across it, the Taiheiyo Belt is also significantly more populated than the northeast megalopolis is as well, which is home to only about 53 million people by comparison. This difference in population density and scale between the two partly explains the dramatically superior rail connectivity across the Taiheiyo Belt that exists today. Japan's famous Shinkansen bullet train network connects the entire corridor together today and enables rapid transport from Tokyo to Fukuyama in only about 3.5 hours.
That's probably why you're only good as your transport and your daily needs. This is why if you build highways, you're probably going to see growth. Same thing with bullet train. Could be one of the reasons. But it could be causes and correlation. It could be either of those.
Roughly half the time that it takes Amtrak's Acela to cover the same distance from Boston to Washington, D.C. at about 6 hours and 40 minutes. But all of this begs a fundamental question. Why does Japan's human geography look like this in the first place? Why does so much of Japan's population all live crammed together within a relatively narrow straight line across a small part of the country? And why is the rest of the country so much more relatively empty by comparison? First of all, it helps a lot to just simply look at a topographic map that shows Japan's elevation. Japan is one of the most mountainous countries in the world, with about 73% of the country's total land area covered by them, leaving behind only about a quarter of the country left for significant human habitation in the few scattered areas of flatter land where urban...
That makes sense. I mean, that kind of applies to China as well. Most of the northwest of China is like mountainous and very few people live there. So this kind of like, okay, I guess it makes sense when it comes to Japan because it's already one straight long island when it comes to Japan. And one strip of area where most people are there, it kind of makes sense. And when it's in most people, it's like 66%, 80 million. Other 40 millions are somewhere else. And it just kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Development is easier and more affordable. Since time immemorial, this fact has left the people of the Japanese archipelago restricted to living within close proximity to each other along the coastal plains and across the few flatter areas within the interior, where some stepped rice fields can be placed in the hills. There are pockets of flat land found all across the country from the west to the east and from the north to the south. But you will note how the Taiheiyo Belt follows across what happens to be the 3 largest continuous areas of flat land found anywhere in the country. The Kinai Plain that encompasses the cities of Osaka, Kobe, and Kyoto, the Nobi Plain that encompasses Nagoya, and the single largest plain of all that can be found anywhere in Japan, the Kanto Plain that encompasses the megacity of Tokyo. All 3 of these plains also have large rivers that flow through them that make them ideal centers for agriculture and supporting large populations. The Nagoya metropolitan area, crowded within the Nobi Plain, is Japan's 3rd largest metro area, home to more than 9.3 million people. The Osaka metropolitan area, crowded within the flat Kinai Plain, is the 2nd largest, home to more than 19.3 million people, while the Tokyo metropolitan area, crowded within the Kanto Plain, is the largest not only in Japan, but in the entire world, with more than 41 million people living there today, more than double the population of the New York City metropolitan area in the United States. Collectively, these 3 plains alone are home to nearly 70 million people. Most of the population lives within the whole Taiheiyo Belt, and indeed more than half of the entire nationwide population. They've historically been the most major population, economic, and political centers in Japan for centuries now, that have long dominated over the rest of the country. But that's not just because they're the 3 largest areas of continuous flat land available for city building. The western side of the island of Honshu that faces the Sea of Japan has some areas of flat land around the coast too. But on top of none of these areas being quite as large as the Kinai, Nobi, and Kanto plains that are over on the Pacific side, they have multiple other disadvantages that have always made them less attractive places to settle in as well. For one thing, the Pacific side of Japan, for whatever reason, was also blessed by the RNG geography gods with significantly larger, deeper, and more useful natural harbors as well. Almost miraculously, Japan is home to not 1, but 2 of the most incredible natural harbors that can be found anywhere on the planet. that are simultaneously huge, deep, exceptionally well-sheltered, and directly connected to large, flat hinterlands that can support huge adjacent population centers. Tokyo
And now at least it makes sense why in World War II they were trying to dominate Pacific. If geography gives them the ports, why not use it? There you go.
Bay and Osaka Bay, which, of course, are also directly connected to the huge flat Kanto and Kenai plains. Tokyo Bay in particular, large, very deep, very well sheltered, and surrounded by the flat Kanto plain that's home to Tokyo and its 41 million people, is so comically overpowered from a commercial trade perspective that it alone handles around 350 million tons of seaborne cargo annually, which is comparable to the entire maritime trade volume of the whole of Italy combined. While not quite as exceptional as the Tokyo and Osaka bays are, the Ise Bay that connects directly to the Nobi Plain where Nagoya is concentrated is also still world-class, being huge, deep, and fairly well-sheltered, with the huge Nobi Plain directly adjacent. Obviously, these three world-class natural harbors that just so happen to directly connect to the three largest flat plains in the country made them even more obvious centers to settle in.
What's with the horrible frame of rate there? My eyes hurt.
In order to capitalize on their ridiculous commercial, trade, and naval potentials. But on top of these three, the Pacific side of Japan has many other excellent natural harbors as well, including the Kagoshima and Nagasaki bays on the Pacific-facing side of Kyushu, and Hiroshima Bay on Honshu. The Western Sea of Japan-facing side of Honshu, by comparison, is nowhere near as jagged as the Pacific-facing side is. It is significantly smoother, and as a result, it has nowhere near as useful of natural harbors and ports as the Pacific-facing side has. The only notable...
Okay, Japan's geography is so atrocious when you look at it. If there, let's just say if there were no nuclear bombs in World War II, allies or America, I don't know, had to invade Japan, it would have been insanely hard. I mean, just looking at it right now, like, yeah, it surprises me how Japan in the first place became such a big economy. If you have this kind of a geography, like, it's not seamless, is it? That just makes you think, like, like how modern Japan, how efficient they are. And there's a reason behind it. Because if you're going to work at something like this and make this work, yeah, you're going to be probably efficient.
Harbors on the Sea of Japan side of Honshu are Maizuru Bay and the port of Niigata. But both of them are still just a tiny fraction of the size of the massive natural harbors over on the Pacific side, like the Tokyo and Osaka bays. And neither of them are connected to as large of a flat plain in the interior that can support millions of people nearby to sustain trade. The Sea of Japan side of Honshu and the entire northern island of
most of it just covered in mountains. Look at that, it's just like barely gaps.
Hokkaido simply have nowhere near as ideal natural harbors to utilize for trade and commerce, on top of nowhere near as large of plains to build cities in, compounding other disadvantages to support huge populations even further. And to make the Pacific side of Japan even more advantageous, it also has the Seto Inland Sea, which is without a coincidence placed directly in the center of the Taiheiyo belt. Because the vast majority of Japan's landmass is mountainous, the islands have an abundance of water, but the dearth of flat land also means that nearly all of the rivers running through the...
Every time I see some scenery from Japan, it is insane. I love this shit. Look at that. You see awesome farmland buildings. Oh, by the way, look at the massive mountain in the background, clouds cutting it. That's landscape. There was a scene earlier as well, like where there was a lot of water and then suddenly a mountain in the background is an island. Like, okay.
Rivers running through the interior are rough and full of rapids and waterfalls that make them completely unsuitable for interior navigation and trade. Something that's made even worse by the fact that most of the rivers don't even connect together either. But what Japan does have that more than makes up for the lack of navigable rivers is the Seto Inland Sea, the largely enclosed body of water that's protected from the rest of the Pacific between the main islands of Honshu, Kyushu, and Shikoku. Between these main islands, there are only 4 very narrow straits that connect the Seto Inland Sea with the rest of the greater Pacific, which makes its water significantly more calm than anywhere in the surrounding ocean. While the tidal currents within the 4 narrow straits leading into and out of the sea can be strong and complex, The rest of the sea is exceptionally navigable, and it blesses Japan's geography with one of the largest internal seas for navigation and trade that can be found anywhere in the world. To give you just a sense of the Seto Inland Sea's scale, if you placed it over the northeast coast of the United States, it would stretch from Washington, D.C. beyond New York City into southern Connecticut. There's also around
RealLifeLore just flooded a lot of America right there. All right.
700 separate smaller islands that can be found dotted all across the Seto Inland Sea as well. Several of them complete with their own incredible deep natural harbors that provided abundant safe anchorage and stopovers for ships steering storms, which made the whole body of water perfect for early maritime trade during the ancient and medieval eras. The sea also provides a moderating effect on the regional climate around it to the extent that it's often referred to as Japan's Mediterranean, an area with year-round warm temperatures that supports year-round navigation and agriculture. During pre-industrial times in Japan, building roads across Japan's mountainous terrain to connect disparate flat areas together was extremely difficult. But the calm
No shit. That's what I was talking about. Like, it is insane, man. Just looking at it gives me anxiety. How do you manage anything? Look at how many. There's barely any land there. Most of that is mountain. I didn't know that about Japan. I'm pretty sure I watched Geography Now video on Japan, but I don't know. I don't know if they mentioned that or not because I didn't know that. That is insanity. The level of mountainous area that is. They managed to build such an insane empire out of that. Yeah.
waters of the Seto Inland Sea provided a critical alternative for much easier and efficient sea-based transportation instead. Even better, at the eastern edge of the sea, the presence of a Waji Island created the even further enclosed Osaka Bay within it, directly connected to the huge flat area of the Kenai Plain in the interior. Thus, from early on within Japan's history, the Seto Inland Sea became the critical maritime trade artery that connected the Kenai Plain and the Osaka Bay and all the other areas around its shorelines with the rest of Honshu to the east, including the Nobi and Kanto plains with their own ideal harbors, and with mainland Asia and Korea further to the west. All of this huge trade volume flowing through it transformed the Seto Inland Sea into the wealthiest area of Japan for centuries, which encouraged settlement around it, and which in
I think South Korea and Japan basically amped up each other a lot when it comes to economy. South Korea, it's like Samsung and like Hyundai, I guess only companies I know of. I don't know. Many others. Japan being Japan, all Japanese thing, Toyota, Honda, anything you can think of, most things are Japanese, right? I mean, there are two engineering hubs you can think of. It's German engineering and Japanese engineering, right? So yeah, they basically amped up each other. Then China rose up as well in the later on. So there you go. India, like, yeah, Suzuki. The biggest market of Suzuki is basically India, right? The default car in default, as in the car you buy in India is probably Suzuki, right? Like how in US it's probably Ford or Chevy when it comes to Ford F-150 or something. In India it's Suzuki's. That's it. All cars are dominated by Suzuki's top 10s, right? So Japan basically having like, access to Asia like that and having ports like that, it just makes sense.
particular directly contributed to the massive population growth in the Kenai Plain that gave rise to Japan's early political center in Kyoto and what eventually became the mega port city of Osaka. For centuries, it was Osaka that was the economic epicenter of Japan because of all of these advantages. And by the time of the Tokugawa shogunate, all of Japan's feudal lords, known as daimyo, had established an office in the city that were known as ozakaya shiki, which were among the earliest forms of banks in Japan, which further reinforced Osaka's early importance. And by the time of the Industrial Age, the other cities around the Seto Inland Sea like Kobe, Okayama, Takamatsu, Fukuyama, Hiroshima, and Kita-Kyushu all developed into major industrial shipping and naval centers as well.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know Hiroshima was near water like that. That surprised me. So when when they dropped the bombs, didn't that have some radiation issue when it comes to like water? Didn't radiation leak out somewhere? I don't know.
Well, carrying over the Seto Inland Sea's importance into the modern era and further solidifying the population concentration within what would become known as the Taiheiyo belt that runs directly across it. After the Tokugawa shogunate managed to largely unify Japan in the early 17th century, the shoguns decided to establish the seat of their power away from the historical imperial capital at Kyoto towards the east at Edo, within the larger Kanto Plain. One of the most profound impacts on Japan's human geography and population pattern that has ever happened. The shoguns relocated their administrative center to Edo, which would later be renamed to Tokyo during the 19th century, in order to distance themselves from the emperor and Japan's traditional nobility in Kyoto so that they wouldn't be overshadowed by them. While they also saw the potential for rapid urban development in the large and expansive Kanto Plain that was still fairly underdeveloped by the time of the early 17th century. At that time, Edo was nothing but a small castle town that was probably only home to a few tens of thousands of people. But within only a century of Tokugawa shogunate rule with Edo as their de facto capital,
Imagine there are people already living in Tokyo right now who are part of that family, very old. Would they even know that? Like, do they even, like, if any Japanese is listening to this, do you track your ancestry that back? Like, I don't know, like, cultures are different, but like, imagine if you're one of those families, like, yeah, we were here before Tokyo was even a thing. Like, imagine that shit.
by around 1700, its population had exploded to more than 1 million people, which transformed it from a small town into one of the largest cities in the world within only a couple of lifetimes. Fueling this enormous growth of people in Edo and the Kanto Plain and elsewhere along the modern Taiheiyo belt during the Tokugawa era was the shogunate's centuries-long policy that was known as Sankin Kotai, which required all of Japan's feudal lords or daimyo to alternate living between their domain and Edo every other year. The hundreds of daimyo at any given time in Japan were forced by this policy to maintain
Isn't it daimyo? Daimyo? I don't know. Is that how you pronounce it? Daimyo? I don't think it's daimyo. It's daimyo or something, right?
a lavish residence both at their homes and in the shogun's capital at Edo. And every other year, when the daimyo moved back and forth between them, they were forced to undergo expensive and lavish processions with their full entourages. For the shogun, the policy was a deliberate strategy to force the daimyos and their families into a state of surveillance in the capital, while the extreme financial burden of maintaining lavish mansions in both locations and moving back and forth between them every other year was both time and money that they couldn't spend on plotting to overthrow the shogun. Their frequent travel back and forth with their full entourages also incentivized road building and the development of inns and other facilities along the routes they took, which helped generate early economic activity along them. Over time, 5 primary routes were developed that the daimyos took between their domains in Edo, and the most used route out of all of them follows directly along the Taiheiyo belt today between Edo and the old imperial capital at Kyoto, which meant that this route became rapidly economically developed across the Tokugawa era into the 19th century and was already the most developed part of the country leading into the era of industrialization that accelerated its growth even further. Another major key to the puzzle that influences the location of Japan's population across the Taiheiyo belt today are the presence of ocean currents, which dramatically influence Japan's regional climates. This is a map of the average winter sea surface temperatures that are found in the Western Pacific using satellite data. From the south, the Kuroshio Current functions in a similar manner to the Gulf Stream in the North Atlantic, carrying warm waters from the Philippines northward along the eastern shores of Japan.
There is a like 24 to 28 degree. Could be, yeah, there's something like that, right? 28 or something.
This current brings warm and moist air along with it, which highly contributes to the mild winters and humid summers that are experienced in Kyushu, Shikoku, and southeastern Honshu, basically immediately along the Taiheiyo belt. And it's what keeps Tokyo in particular relatively warm for a city at its latitude. At the same time, an opposite oceanic current also comes down to Japan from the north that's known as the Oyashio Current, a cold, subarctic current that flows south from the Arctic Ocean through.
How the fuck there are no hurricanes there, if that's the case? Like, this is just the right... obviously, it would affect air itself if the water is that cold. Wouldn't that create some kind of hurricane or something?
Through the Bering Strait that carries frigid but nutrient-rich Arctic waters along with it. Almost immediately northeast of Tokyo Bay, the cold Oyashio Current collides with the warm Kuroshio Current, creating one of, if not the, richest fishery areas on the planet that has always been easy to capture and exploit from the relative safety of nearby Tokyo Bay to help support the population across the Kanto Plain. The cold air above the Oyashio Current contributes substantially to the colder climate that can be found in the northern island of Hokkaido and along the western coast of Honshu that faces the Sea of Japan. But there's a lot of other complex climatic effects going on here that makes them even worse. A branch of the warm Kuroshio Current, known as the Tsushima Current, breaks off and flows into the Sea of Japan from the south. But during the winters, when cold and dry air originating from Siberia will blow across the Sea of Japan, the cold air masses will pick up the moisture and warmth from the relatively mild Tsushima Current and become saturated. When that saturated air then hits the mountains in western Honshu and Hokkaido, it'll rapidly cool and then dump an absolutely enormous amount of snow in the process. Like to the point that northwestern Honshu and Hokkaido are among the snowiest locations that can be found anywhere.
What the fuck is this? Oh, I did not see this coming. This is a gem for me. I love science and I love this. I did not see this coming. The level of disparity in like temperatures here, temperature of water, and the level of currents creating ice. I was genuinely wondering, like, you're talking about like the water is like 28 degrees and all that, so probably temperature of the Japan is going to be something like that. Why the fuck is that place so icy? I was just wondering that just a few seconds ago. This is why. This is insane, man.
On the planet. It also means that eastern Honshu, that faces the warmer waters of the Pacific, along with Shikoku and Kyushu, experience dramatically less snowfall than the western side of Honshu and Hokkaido suffer throughout the winter. An area of Japan that's literally referred to by the Japanese as the snow country. From a North American perspective, the climate found in Hokkaido is more similar to the area around Lake Ontario, like Toronto, Buffalo, and Rochester. The northern and western sides of Honshu are generally more comparable to coastal New England and the mid-Atlantic, while the eastern side of Honshu, along with Shikoku and Kyushu, are much warmer and rainier and are more comparable to Georgia and South Carolina. Northwestern Honshu is so snowy because of this effect during the winter that Aomori City in the north of
This looks like even snow has snow on top of it. Look at how the blizzard is insane.
the island holds the distinction of being the snowiest major city in the world. Its 265,000 people experience a whopping average of 8 meters or 26 feet of snowfall every winter. Nearly 6 times as much snowfall as Minneapolis experiences on average in the United States.
Minneapolis? You are kidding me, right? Minneapolis is so snowy that they have that things, right? The sky walk or whatever. The buildings are literally connected. So you can walk from building to building so you don't have to go outside. That's Minneapolis as far as I remember. Yeah, it is.
Snowfall gets so deep in some parts of the snow country that some buildings are designed and built with a special entrance through their second story. All kinds of special infrastructure considerations have to be made in the snow country. Residents have to remove the piles of snow that accumulate on their roofs in order to prevent its weight from crushing and caving them in. Streets are often lined with covered sidewalks to make sure that residents
So there you go, people. Why is Toyota so reliable? Because it has to work in shit like this. This is why.
can still get around in the winter. Streets are equipped with sprinklers that deploy warmer groundwater to keep them passable by melting snow. And in some towns, people even used to tunnel paths through the snow in order to get to each other's homes. All of this means the development in the snow country is just more expensive and time-consuming than it is elsewhere in Japan. And thus, when you put this all together, it's pretty easy to see why the area that became the Taiheiyo belt is by far the most densely populated part of the country, and why it has been for a very long time now. The Taiheiyo belt has the advantages of the Seto Inland Sea for a large, calm, and easily navigable body of water to facilitate trade, movement, and commerce. It encompasses by far the best natural harbors that can be found in the islands and some of the best anywhere in the entire world, like Tokyo and Osaka bays, both of which are directly connected to large flat hinterlands in the Kenai and Kanto plains with another world.
Look, man, I love RealLifeLore, but he sometimes stretches out too much. Like, I'm pretty sure he made this point 5th time now.
Class harbor at Issei Bay in between them, connected to another large flat hinterland in the Nobi Plain, which enabled a sort of leapfrogging ability for ships early in history to take between them and the Seto Inland Sea that established early modern Japan's commercial superhighway. It has by far the more milder climate in Japan compared to the western Sea of Japan side of Honshu that gets buried by snow during the winter. And it's also closest to what's arguably the richest fishery in the world off the coast of eastern Honshu, where the warm Kuroshio and cold Oyoshio currents clash together. One of the very few notable cons of the Taiheiyo Belt and the Pacific side of Japan from a geographic perspective is that it's also located across the most natural disaster-prone area of Japan as well, which experiences more damaging earthquakes and tsunamis than anywhere else in the country does due to the locations of the Japanese archipelago's subsurface fault lines and the coastline's exposure to the vast open Pacific on this side. But these natural disasters are sporadic enough that the numerous advantages of concentrating within the Taiheiyo Belt have repeatedly outweighed them enough across the centuries to be decisive. And that, in a nutshell, is why Japan's population exists where it does today. Now, there's a lot of data that goes into producing these kinds of videos, whether it's visually showing you the scale of the Taiheiyo Belt compared to the US northeast coast, detailing out how the system of ocean currents, mountains, and wind patterns contribute to northwestern Japan's enormous snowfall levels, or showing you the risk of natural disasters across Japan that are heavily concentrated within the Taiheiyo Belt. The ability to actually visualize raw data like this on the map instead of just reading about it in text format is exactly what makes learning about these kinds of geography-based subjects so fascinating to me. And it's why the Exploring Data Visually course is one of my favorite courses that I've ever taken with this video's sponsor, Brilliant.
Yeah, there you go. I'm like, new sponsor? No, it's Brilliant. Yeah, well, go to original video page, link it from there, support this channel. I love RealLifeLore because of this, because this type of geographic video is what I want to watch. This was awesome. I didn't know about why it snows there. I didn't know about the different water temperature currents that comes there. I didn't know about so much mountainous the Japan was. Like, okay, this is insane. Knowing all these different conditions, I mean, obviously this kind of extreme condition also makes it more fertile ground for certain economies, which Japan is. But that doesn't change the fact it's insanely harder for a place like that to be like productive in a way. But if you can do it, obviously the people who come out of that are going to be insanely disciplined and like efficient, which they are. It just makes sense. I mean, yeah, you know, like the bullet train that is building in India is literally just like a 1 kilometer from where I live, right? I see bullet train construction. Just the concept there alone, I see how it's being constructed, like the level of like detail there is. Yeah, it's just insane, man. The engineering is insane. Well, if you like my next one, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.